Welcome to the first postscript segment of Scale Modeling Workshop. Lately I've been focused on the Revell PT boat, as per my usual not leaving well enough alone. Working through the various modifications and scratch building, I found myself getting a little bogged down redoing parts. More precisely, the radar mast, with all its weird angles, proved especially challenging. Doing a part over isn't a problem. In fact, I usually expect it. But after about the third or fourth time, the fun starts to get lost. That's usually a signal to take a pause, reach for the coffee pot, straighten up my work area and my original thinking about the project. Reworking a kit's always a bit challenging, not necessarily from the actual construction process. When you work with a kit, there's usually compromises. You're fixing or modifying one thing, but there's that other thing that just isn't quite right. You have to draw a line someplace, or it becomes that situation of the guy who's trying to level the dining table and finally winds up with a coffee table. But it isn't always that easy. Chances are you've already spent a fair amount of time building and doing research. What was just of interest in the beginning now seems to be more significant, and you feel the need to fix more stuff. Ultimately, if left unchecked, this could get ugly. In the process of sorting and putting away all the loose styrene strip stock that littered my workbench, I reached for the dial caliper. I seldom use it, and truth be told, I only bought it because that was the type of caliper used by the friend of mine that taught me miniature machine work. In fact, early on, I'd leapfrogged over the dial and landed in the digital world. For 40 years, this is what I usually reached for. And it wasn't until recently, when the switch started acting up, that I bought a new one. Digital calipers are great. They're fast and easy to zero out, and they're accurate out to 4 decimal places. Or are they? It's a bit deceptive. In actuality, the 4th place is only in 5/10,000ths. It's either 5 or 0. So like everything in the digital world, it's either on or off, black or white. On the other hand, the dial caliper is an analog device, where everything's basically different shades of gray, requiring interpretation. What I noticed as I was sorting out the styrene strips was how fast I could read the dial, and I pretty much ignored their approximate size. Styrene strips rarely spot on, and for some reason, the errors in size look worse when displayed digitally. With the dial, I noticed myself just accepting the size as good enough, and I rationalized that it was all relative anyway. After all, the needle was pretty close to that line on the dial. Even though the dial's marked for thousandths of an inch, you have the opportunity to make your own interpretation if it lines up, and how significant the in-between position is. If you think about it, it's really a metaphor for scale modeling. Everything about scale modeling is a compromise in one sort or another. It's really up to each modeler to decide how significant any deviation from a scale measurement might be. And isn't everything all relative to how close it is to your line? Maybe modeling with a digital readout and the 4th decimal place can get in your way. Not everything can be boiled down to just numbers, especially when what you're trying to recreate was designed back in the day when we used these. Consider some of the shape issues we see with the modern kits, where a designer starts out with very little knowledge or appreciation for the shape of the prototype. I found it was fun working with the dial caliper. I can see why so many of these types of calipers are still made. It's really nice to be able to interpret that in-between value for myself. How close is good enough? Just like the model itself. Does it look right enough to my eye? More than a number on the digital readout, it's not black or white. Does your model look good to your eye? And how good is your eye? That's all that's important. Maybe that's one of the pieces that my friend left for me to figure out for myself, and it took 40 years. I can only say thank you, and better late than never.